Well, the X-rays and stuff are going crazy. We're going to make a video about that. But right now, ask yourself this question. If I can prove to you that they are actually manipulating global weather, if I could prove that to you, then I would also prove that you've been lied to for a long time. And if I can prove that you've been lied to, then you must and have to ask yourself, what else have you been lied to about? You're looking at pretty much the greater Atlantic area. South America's down at the bottom. And, off to the right, you see, looks like a splotch of blue with a patch of white in it. That is what we call a ghost system. And there's a half a dozen of ghost systems now on planet Earth. Off the coast of Argentina and South Brazil, in the deep South Atlantic, we see a patch of blue again with a white spot in the middle. That's another ghost system. These are rotating clockwise in the southern hemisphere. These ghost systems fit and match each other in many, many different ways. One of them is the breadth and the depth of which they affect the jet streams. Also, they're layered in concentric rings. Many of these start out dry and eventually draw up moisture as they persist. You see one exiting via Canada, but what you don't see is the ghost system that's just plunging down from the north. And these systems all do the same thing, especially in the northern hemisphere. They mow down water at the 9 o'clock position of these spirals and re-eject the water out the opposite side, where you're looking about the 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock position on the spiral. They're just like a lawnmower. A lawnmower mows down lawn and then throws the clipping out the other side. Well, that's what these do. So they could be made to direct streams of water, and they could also be made to mow down and redirect the jet stream. Now, looking at Canada, you see that system approaching Greenland. That one just raced up the east coast, but it's being followed by a second system. That second system is it started down in Texas, even Mexico. Right behind it is a binary or a second system coming through Canada and sweeping that jet stream towards the United States. But what happens is, when we go out to the Pacific, we see that that jet stream will eventually, when it gets to California, it will divert. It will disappear. It will do things that you never thought would be possible in the laws of physics, but yet it's happening right before your eyes. You notice a patch of moisture gone in that jet stream. It's really not a jet stream anymore, but that patch of water is gone. Why? Because there's a system up there mowing down that water. Now, this is Hawaii over here. You can't see Hawaii very well, but above Hawaii we have another system that is starting to rotate. It blocks water coming in from the left, re-ejects it out on the right. That system is invisible almost. So what's going on when we have all these spirals all over the globe? Well, the day before yesterday, look at this monster spiral that's off the coast of Vancouver, just south of Alaska. Notice what it's doing to the jet stream. It's splitting the jet stream and redirecting it. Redirecting it how? In a 90-degree turn. Now, what would cause water that's racing in one direction to suddenly make a 90-degree turn? That's incredible. So we go over to Africa, and sorry we're jumping around, but you see at the top of your screen a spiral moving through. That spiral is part of a 3-spiral system, but it is massive. And it may have started in Mexico, it may have started in Alaska, and if we get these weather satellites up every day, you'll be able to track the origins of these mysterious systems. Now, back at the Atlantic, especially the northern Atlantic, let me see if we can get, there we go. Here is Greenland. Look at that huge spiral there. Well, that huge spiral is being, it has satellite spirals around it, and and it kind of tilts that second spiral up and pulls it down on the backside. It's creating a tremendous flow of moisture that appears to be headed towards Europe, but another spiral in front of it will simply mow it down and redirect it, depending on where the streams of water are being directed. So if you were to theorize they're controlling the weather, then you'd have to say, well, the areas that are getting rain are areas that are picked for long-term survival. But Florida's up there at the upper left. You see that stream of moisture crossing over by Florida and being redirected by these systems. When we flip out and we look at the entire Atlantic, you can see that there's more of a vertical jet stream than there are horizontal jet streams. This should not be happening. So the best we can do is go back and look at different altitudes, different wavelengths to see how much moisture is exactly in these systems. Here's that system 2.5 days ago. It was a round system. Now it's getting flat edges. These systems, all of them, have well-defined eyes, which usually doesn't happen in an upper level system. I mean, they look like hurricanes from the air once they get enough water in it to define it. With no water, they're basically almost invisible. Now, the one off the coast, you look at South Atlantic off the coast of Brazil, a couple days ago, you can see it kind of drawing water in from that jet stream. And so that's what's happening in the south now. The same thing that's been happening in the north is these spirals are starting to determine where the droughts occur and where the flooding occurs. If they can control the weather, then there should be no drought, right? If you can make it rain, make it rain. So one of these systems that just popped up in the Caribbean moved its way 3 days ago into into that flow that's going so fast north. This system started to develop an eye, upper level, like a hurricane. It's spinning counterclockwise. It's in the northern hemisphere, but it started down in the Caribbean as a patch of moisture, and now it's another well-defined system that's gathered up water. This started out like that system we had just showed you that's barely visible off the coast of Brazil and Argentina. When we go to higher particulates, sometimes the higher particulates will show you the ghost system. Okay, look over the Central Pacific. You'll barely see that spiral with a well-defined eye. That spiral is controlling all the weather in the United States right now that's coming in from the west. That also north of Hawaii, there is that spiral shows up now that's basically invisible. It's got a well-defined eye, and it's pulling water up from the northern equatorial belt. So that's an amazing system. When we switch to a different wavelength, it just looks like a patch, a small patch of water. But that small patch of water is preventing anything coming from the west. And generally, the directional flow should be from right to left. But since the jet streams are so tilted, we now have bands of moisture traveling in opposite directions. And these spirals then, as we render and go to different wavelengths and different altitudes, these spirals, some of them disappear and some of them actually are made to be more visible. It really all depends on how much water is in the system. You can see off the Cuba coast, there's another spiral system. It doesn't look too well organized, but again, there's a discernible eye, a dark area that's completely spherical. And look how that water is just being sucked to the north. And you don't even see the spiral system that's doing it. That spiral system is in North Texas and New Mexico. You can't even see it. And it is spinning and controlling the weather. It's preventing water from going into Texas and into New Mexico. and then redirecting it and shooting it out into the East Coast flow. When we go to the cloud top, you can see at cloud top there's no moisture. The equatorial band that goes by Hawaii basically is almost non-existent on the eastern part of the Pacific. Towards the western part, this is where a lot of the moisture gets drawn up as well, south of Hawaii. When we go to the southern hemisphere, you have to ask, where is all the moisture? You know, you just don't see any at the cloud top level. Now here, a couple days ago, there was a dual system just underneath Alaska. And this is what we're seeing now. We're instead of seeing one system, we're seeing dual systems. And notice how it's creating a void in that jet stream to the south. It's just dissipating that water. And look, it has split the jet stream. But off to the left is, what do you want to call that? Off to the left is a system that just doesn't appear to have any water in it. And that's crazy because it's impossible to create an uplift and a spiral over an ocean without evaporating that water. But at the very lower left, you can see that system that's north of Hawaii mowing down the water to the left of the spiral and then re-ejecting it to the right. And at a high rate of speed, it gets ejected. So if you can control these spirals, you can control the weather. And the patents exist, the memos exist, they're there. Now we go to the North Atlantic, and there's that spiral off of Greenland that we showed you earlier, that's impacting all of Europe. Again, we see it mowing down water on the left, and then you cannot see the ejection because it's kind of cut off on the frame. But you know, racing up the East Coast is this stream of water. Now, if you get caught under this stream of water, you can flood. But if it's fast-moving water, it doesn't drop as much rain. Look how flat these edges are coming to this system. You should not have a flat edge on a spherical system. You know, the laws of momentum, the laws of physics, the laws of inertia dictate that the system cannot develop a flat edge unless it's acted upon by an outside force. You have to ask yourself, what is that outside force that takes a spherical system and suddenly creates flat edges like a hexagon? What was doing that? Now 3 days ago, there was a patch of moisture just coming up from the Caribbean into the Gulf, and you don't even see the spiral. But there's a hook right above Cuba, and you don't. It's almost impossible to see these upper level, low pressure systems, and we never used to see well-defined eyes in upper level system because the air just wasn't that tight. Now we go down to Australia. Look, Australia doesn't even have a cloud over it. Now, how often in the old days did you see an entire continent that is devoid of any clouds? Not a single cloud. We go over to the West Pacific, Northwest, and again you see a double system at the very top of the globe. A double system. Now we're trying to understand what these double systems doing. They used to be single systems, one after another after another. Now they're double systems. What is the impact of the double system? We go down to Hawaii again, and there is that little patch off to the left that, you know, that just is controlling the weather. It doesn't have any moisture in it, hardly at all. It's almost invisible, but yet there's an extreme rotation that's dividing, separating that jet stream, redirecting it, mowing down the moisture that would be flowing by Hawaii, changing their direction of the actual equatorial flow. That equatorial belt of water should be going from right to left. That's what it's done our whole lives. And it's just a mess. It's just a mess. The southern equatorial belt, just above Australia is patchy. So it's starting to be, the southern equatorial belt is going to be suffering the same fate as the northern equatorial belt. Just off the west coast of Australia, you'll see a vertical stream headed south, and it reaches all the way up to New Guinea, and is directing the flow down to Antarctic region. I mean, what would pull that kind of moisture from the equator down to the South Pole? I mean, that's a very influential system. Well, that's because it's an upper level low that's been created by an ionosphere heater and VLF, very low frequency radio waves. There's articles about what VLF does to our atmosphere. So amazing what's happening. We got double spiral systems now, back to back, which you know, we're going to follow these and see why the double systems. Are they intentional? Do they do something different than the single system? But you look at the upper right, you see the system, you know, up by Greenland, making a turn to the right, from the right to the left, but underneath it is an invisible system that's affecting the flow of the system above it. In other words, what we have here is a triple rotating system. One south of Greenland, one due east of Greenland, and then another one south, due south in the Atlantic. You got three systems all created an eye, all spiraling like counterclockwise, and then rotating around one another like a tertiary star system where the three stars circle around one another. Again, a couple days ago, this is like 3 days ago now, we see that the Gulf of Mexico off to the left is just starting to, you know, get a little moisture in it. Cuba itself we don't see any spirals, but somehow one just popped up. You know, we just showed you that spiral north of Cuba, barely visible. Here's a better shot of the Greenland and North Atlantic, and look how that spiral system is just moving. It's moving very rapidly. It has concentric rings. It has a discernible eye, which makes it look almost like a classic hurricane. And we're seeing these systems all over the globe now, all over the globe. But I mean, this water, you have to ask yourself why these jet streams suddenly dissipate. Well, look what over Arizona. This started in the Baja, Mexico region. There's an extreme rotation here, a lot of high wind. But look at the backside of this system that you can almost invisible at cloud top level is keeping the moisture out to the southwest, but yet ejecting moisture up through New Mexico. So, I mean, what a change 3 days brings. These fast moving upper level spirals move very quickly sometimes. Now, the flooding comes when they park. If you could park one of these off the coast and under the 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock position will be where all the rain flows. That patch of moisture in the south is barely moving up into the Gulf. And you see that system just off of the Massachusetts coast. I mean, that's the one that ended up in Greenland, part of that tertiary system. So, I mean, where did it come from? How did it form? Why do all of these have a discernible eye? Well, that's because of the low pressure that's being created. They use ionosphere heaters that are microwave, very low frequency radio waves. They heat the ionosphere. They create uplift and low pressure. So if you were to heat the ocean, you would get more and more and more moisture. Now, look at that system now that's just plunging I mean, this is such a dynamic model, but you can see that tertiary system off of Greenland in the upper right. Each system's rotating around the other. But look at that system that's in the Gulf right there. I mean, these are spirals that just pop up out of nowhere, and it really baffles me. This is a great view of the one in the northern Pacific 3 days ago. It's now plunging down and mowing down all the moisture that's coming into California. And they're supposed to get 7 days of rain in Cali. I told everybody, you're not getting 7 days of rain. There's a system that's mowing down all the moisture. People look at me like I'm crazy. But over Hawaii, you don't see anything except a little speck over Hawaii. I mean, these systems just pop up overnight, and they're invisible, and is why we call them ghost systems. We're going to zoom in on that one in the South Alaskan Bay off the coast of Vancouver, and look how it's plunging down. This is what's redirected the entire jet stream. It's a spiral that it looks huge, and may have been around for weeks, and it may have started here and traversed the entire globe and come back in the same position. Much bigger system than it appeared when it first started. But again, look at off the coast of Hawaii, north of Hawaii, just a splotch, and that system is redirecting a flow of moisture. You see the spiral system on the right headed up towards Greenland. You see another spiral system right behind it that's just forming off the east coast. You see the plunge on the left, due south. I mean, this is how you freeze Texas, is you take one of these systems and you park it far enough north where it can grab cold water, cold air, and then thrust it down south. So all of a sudden we get cooler temperatures, but it's dry. It's a dry system, unless you're the people that are sitting under the 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock position, and it ejects like a lawnmower ejects the clippings. So as we go back a couple more days, you see Australia was still dry. Amazing. So we got dry systems that just show up out of nowhere, and they're very fast moving, and when they're associated with 2 and 3 spirals, it changes the whole dynamic of the weather. But the bottom line is this: you cannot create uplift without heat, and if you do it over the ocean, you have to have evaporation. That is the law of the universe. You heat water, you get evaporation. So nowhere on planet Earth should there be a low pressure system that is so well developed, it has a discernible eye and a rotation that affects either the jet stream or the equatorial belt of water. To have a system that powerful, that is dry, can only be artificial. That's the bottom line. So if they've been lying about weather, what else have they been lying about? And if they can control weather, why are there droughts? Until next time, be prepared, not scared.